Hey guys, welcome back to Throwing Wrenches Garage. I'm Tom, and this is part 2 of putting the rear end, the Quick Performance 9-inch rear end, into the green 1970 Chevelle. I'm thinking about calling this episode maybe Put Me Down Now, Smother Me in My Sleep. Why didn't I take up stamp collecting? Why does the world hate me? Why couldn't I have been smarter instead of so damn good looking? Do I like this pain? No, I'm going to keep a positive attitude about this. We're going to get this licked this week, I promise. We're going to get this fixed and we're going to get this running. Well, unfortunately, I missed my deadline, couldn't get this video out for Friday, and that's partially because I forgot something that at one point in time I knew. And that is that I needed to replace my proportioning valve. So, the proportioning valve is right here. That is what helps take the fluid from the master cylinder and proportion it correctly to the front and rear brakes. Now, what I had forgotten is that you do need a specific proportioning valve depending upon the brake system that you have. And I went from a front wheel disc, rear wheel drum system to now a 4-wheel disc system. It takes a different proportioning valve. Now the reason being is that a drum brake system actually requires less fluid to run it than a disc brake system does. So the proportioning valve is just not going to work correctly now on a 4-wheel disc system. You just have no brakes in the back. That's why I had no brakes in the back. Now, it was true that I had not dialed in or adjusted those rear brake calipers correctly. So I did need to do that anyway, but it's also the reason why even after doing that correctly, it didn't fix my brake system. So FedEx delivered this to me today from Summit, not a terribly expensive part, but it is effectively the same overall block of cheese here. It's just a different valving system. So this should be a straight up replacement. I don't even think I have to replace any of the tubing, I hope. Just one-for-one replacement, put everything back in where it needs to go. And then I'll just bleed the system, which is now going to have to be a full bleed, unfortunately, front and back, because I'm opening the whole thing up. And then with any amount of luck, we'll be able to get this thing back on the road and running again. So that's really it. It's a stupidly simple part change. Very, very easy. Just the 2 master cylinder connections, 1 rear connection, and then the 2 front connections. That's it. You're swapping them over. It's literally the same layout as the other one, the same fittings. It's even the same mounts. So I didn't even change the bracket. Everything's the same piece. So couldn't have gone too much easier. Now we're just going to bleed it, and then hopefully everything's going to be good. So we're going to get this thing jacked up in the air so I can get access to all 4 wheels, and we'll see if we can't get it bled. Drive number 4. I can already tell, right off the bat, they're not there. This is killing me, man. Killing me, Smalls. You're killing me. I mean, there's brakes, but they're not full brakes. It's stopping the car, but not in any way that I feel safe with. So, at this point, we've done a lot. We've gone through a bunch. I'm just not sure what else is left. We've bled them about 50,000 times. We've changed the proportioning valve.
to the disc-to-disc proportioning valve from a disc drum proportioning valve. That should fix a problem there. Okay, so at this point, yeah, change the proportioning valves. I think we're going to go ahead and change master cylinder. We'll do a disc-to-disc master cylinder. It's possible that that's been blown, so we'll try that out. I don't think it's highly likely.
All right, so here's the current situation. It's been a hot minute. It's been long enough, in fact, that the cut that I gave myself on the head the first day that I was doing this job has healed. Look at that. My continuity person is going to go nuts. Just kidding, that's me. Anywho, things got out of hand quickly. So I bled the brakes on this thing about 150, maybe 175 times. Did it with the vacuum bleeder, did it with Declan in the seat. I got to the point where I am 100% convinced that there's no air anywhere in the lines, but I am still not getting brakes in this thing. So went further down the rabbit hole of trying to identify what this was. Troubleshooting. So the deal is, when you have air in your brake lines, generally speaking, you can pump them up. You can sort of press past the air bubble, pump up the brakes, step on the pedal a couple of times, and you'll build that pressure up. I wasn't able to do that. Pumping the brakes didn't do anything, and the pedal was going to the floor. So all of that adds up to me that this, I think, is the master cylinder gone bad. It's the last thing that I have left. There's no external leak anywhere in the system. There's no dripping. There's no brake fluid loss. It's not coming out anywhere. So I'm not losing fluid in the system. There's no air in the lines. There's nothing coming out of any of the calipers for air as I bleed this thing through. So the pedal is just completely unresponsive. All the way to the floor, virtually no resistance. So one way or another, I think the master cylinder went bad. Whether it was on its way out and this was just the last call, or whether this is gone as a result of me driving it around with the wrong proportioning valve on it, which could also be partially the case. I'm not sure. Doesn't really matter. I had to get a new master cylinder. So that's what we got here. And we specifically got a model that is for dual disc brakes, for a disc in the front and the back. I got to double check and make sure that this looks like it's going to line up, but a quick visual inspection says it looks like the same deal. So hopefully it is, and then this should be a relatively quick swap. We just will have to make sure that we bleed this first. We'll do a bench bleed on it. And then once it's bench bled, we'll be able to get this thing installed. So that is our plan. Alright, so the goal here is to bench bleed this. So we are going to not really fill this, but maybe half fill these reservoirs. And then we are going to use a screwdriver here to push in the piston. All the way. And then let it come back, and we're just going to keep on doing that until we get no more bubbles. So this is an important part of bleeding this whole system. This you will not get by just bleeding your brakes.
So I'm just using the cheap little clear tubes that they give you as a bleeder kit with this particular master cylinder. But all I'm doing is continuing to cycle through this piston over and over again until I don't see any more air bubbles coming through those tubes. Once there's no more air bubbles and there's nothing but fluid going through those tubes, and I don't see any more bubbles finding their way up through the reservoir, I know that I've got this thing bled. And once I know that the whole thing is bled, I can go ahead and cap this thing off, seal it up, and I'm not going to worry about the fact that there's still fluid bleeding out of the bottom of those nipple connections, out of the bottom of the master cylinder. That's fine, as long as it's just constantly dripping out and bleeding out. That's not really introducing air back into the system. That's allowing that to drip out. Will it make a mess? Sure, a little bit, but it's not going to bring air back in. It's just going to let that fluid come out. So don't get too hung up on that part of it. You can just let it go. But I did put the cap back on here just to make sure I didn't spill.
Well, guys, it's late. And it's like 11 o'clock. And it's a school night. This guy's got to get his beauty rest. Lord knows I need it. It's way too late to start the car up. I'll just wake everybody up. No one will be happy with me at that point, even though I desperately want to run this thing. So I'll have to wait until tomorrow to do that. But we will get it out running tomorrow.
All right, so we're on drive 5 here, and I'm about to drive us into a bridge abutment. I'm going nuts. There's still not a brake pedal. And what I don't get, what makes no sense to me, and what I'm trying to wrestle through in my brains is I get a brake pedal after we've bled the brakes. So we bleed the brakes, proper procedure, with the little stopper in place on the proportioning valve. We get a brake pedal, okay? Feels good. I remove that little stopper. I put the switch back in. When we start the car, brake pedal goes away. And when a brake pedal goes away, it's going away because the proportioning valve is tripping. It's tripping to the fronts, meaning it thinks that the rears have a problem. So we'll bleed the rears again. We'll bleed the rears again. Jesus. I don't know, guys. I don't know.
I'm starting to feel like this is that movie, 127 Hours. I was about ready to gnaw my own arm off for not being able to get this thing running, but finally, we have brake pedal. Honest to goodness, real brake pedal. All the brakes are now satisfactory bled. Declan finally came down here, he had a moment off and was able to help me bleed these, and I think we're good. So now, in retrospect, I didn't get to film a lot of this because I'll be honest with you, I was at my wit's end. I'm surprised I got any hair left, and I'm surprised any of it still has any color. But it was a proportioning valve issue, and I learned something new, which is what I want to try to bring you guys, right? Is when I learn new stuff, teach you guys new stuff. So here's what I learned. So this little doohickey here is our proportioning valve. This is the old one. So this is the one for the drum brakes or front disc rear drums. That I replaced. Now, this did need to be replaced because it was never going to work appropriately because disc brakes need a different amount of fluid than the drums, so there was always going to be a problem. So I wasn't chasing anything there. This was the right thing to do. I'm just using this as an example. And for this example, this one's going to work just as well as showing you the current one that's in there. So here's what we're looking at. Right here, this is the little sensor that would, if connected to your dash light, would trigger your brake light when something's wrong with your brakes. And when we say something wrong, this is sort of the primary job of this proportioning valve. Now, this is supposed to do really two things. One is to proportion the amount of brake work that your front and rear brakes are doing, to make sure that your front brakes are doing more work than your rear brakes are doing. But the other thing that it's supposed to do is sort of part of the job that a dual master cylinder does, and that is to keep you from having a problem on the road. Oh, this is hard to do with one hand. Oh, there it is. It's got the O-ring. All right, so it's supposed to keep you from having a big issue on the road when you end up losing brakes in either the front or the back. What it's supposed to do is shut off either the rear or the front. So basically, if this thing senses a loss of pressure in the front or a sense of loss of pressure in the rear, it effectively shuts off the fluid from the master cylinder to that front or that rear if it senses that loss of pressure, and just shifts all the braking to the other set of brakes. And what this does, this little sensor has a ground out. So this little pin rides inside the valve post that sits inside of this unit. There's a little U in the center of that post. This thing rides inside that U. It's spring-loaded. You can see. Rides up and down. So normally this thing, when everything is going cool, is just sort of free-floating, and that valve is not touching it. It's sort of hovering above the low point in the U. But when things go haywire and that valve has to shut off either the front or the rear brakes, that post moves forward or it moves back, and the upper side of that U catches this thing, thereby sort of moving it up, makes that connection and grounds out the switch, and that gives you your brake light. You can see, I think, hold up to the light here, if you look inside this thing, and hopefully it's going to focus, you can see a little bit of gold or a little bit of brass inside that center hole. That's because this particular proportioning valve right now is tripped. It has shut off the rear brakes because it sensed a pressure differential that was bad, because it wasn't sensing the kind of pressure that it was expecting when I had the disc brakes on the rear. So this one's sort of doing what it's supposed to do. Now, let me see if I can get this to trip the other way. Yeah, see, in normal operation, this is what it should look like. You can see it's sort of darker. You can kind of see down into the valley there. That's the lower portion of the U. You can see a gap, a hollow there. So if that sensor was stuck inside of there now, it wouldn't be making contact with anything metal, and therefore wouldn't be throwing any trips or any sensors, and fluid would be flowing the correct way to both the front and the rear braking system. Fast forward to where I was having a problem. I went ahead and replaced that proportioning valve. But what I did not realize, because it's not in the instructions, and I didn't do a whole lot of searching before I installed it because it wasn't in the instructions, I thought this would be a pretty straightforward thing, is that when you install a proportioning valve, it is very, very easy for that proportioning valve to read the lack of fluid in the lines as a loss of pressure, and therefore throw a trip. So it throws that balance off and it shuts down either the fronts or the rears, wherever it doesn't sense that pressure. And so that's what I was dealing. Now, fortunately, there is instructions that came with that proportioning valve that told me, hey, if you think you're getting an imbalance, go ahead and test it this way, which basically means just hooking up a test light to power, and then holding that test light to that little sensor tip. And if it turns on, then you know that it's tripped. You know that that balance is shifted and it's shut off either the front or the rears. Then it goes through a procedure to tell you how to correct it. And basically, what you're supposed to do is on one side of the car, crack the bleeder on a front and a rear wheel. And then you're supposed to have somebody inside the car press on the brakes and watch which bleeders trickle and which one flows. The one that flows is the unlocked line. That's the one that you're going to leave open. The one that trickles, you leave closed. That's the block line. And then what you're supposed to do, basically, is just jam on the brakes with that open line. And the idea is you're supposed to build up enough pressure with that line open that it tricks the valve into thinking that that line now, the free line, is the one that has the problem, and it slips the balance back in. I tried that. I tried that a lot. Tried that with my daughter helping me because Declan wasn't here. It did not work. So I then had to go to plan B, which was to basically stick an awl inside that hole and manually shift it. This was after confirming that I had no leaks and no problems in the system and that the lines had fluid. And then I had to go ahead and set about bleeding the brakes again properly. But here's the trick. If you don't want that to happen again, you have to make sure that that valve can't close, that it can't sense that problem again and close again, because if it closes, you're never going to be able to bleed the brakes properly because the fluid won't flow. So I made this. Now, you can buy this part. This is a proportioning valve brake bleeder pin. You can find these at Summit. You can find them in a lot of places, actually. They're pretty inexpensive parts. Because mine was sort of a last-minute desperation deal, I actually found this online as a 3D printed model. And I have a 3D printer, so not a great one, just a small one, but it was perfect for this part. It took 36 minutes to print this out, so I did that before I went to bed one night. And you screw this in place of that sensor while the valve is wide open, and this little pin here locks in place in that valve and ensures that it can't close. So we put that in place. Declan came back out, and we went ahead and bled the whole brake system again. All four wheels. Did it once, then did it twice. We definitely have a nice, firm brake pedal now. So now that we're good with the brake pedals, we have the system back in place. It is now working. I am relieved. I about want to cry at this point because it's taken me so long to get here. But now it is time to hook up the emergency brake cables, which, God, I hope goes simpler. Well, good news, bad news. Good news is the parking brake was easy. The hookup was fine. Bad news is freaking brakes still don't work. So even after all that bleeding and Declan helping me out, the things are still dying on me. As soon as I start the car up, that proportioning valve is still tripping. And it's still flipping back. So I'm kind of at my wit's end here. And I'm not sure what to do. So at this point, the path where I'm at, I've gone through everything that I know how to go through. The master cylinder is good. Off camera, I bled the master cylinder on the bench again. I removed it again and bled it again. I have double checked the throwout of the rod on the master cylinder compared to the old one. I've double checked to make sure that the rod in the car on the pedal is matched up correctly and is making the right contact and is pushing that cylinder all the way. It's the master cylinder is working. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. And it is completely bled. It is airless. It's working flawlessly. And I can get a pedal, so I know it's working. But as soon as the car starts up, that thing trips. So, and it's tripping to the rear. So something's going on with the rear brakes, and it's not a leak. It's got to be the calipers. So I got studying to do. I guess I'm going to have to go and look online. And I'm just going to have to start doubling down on the Google Foo to figure out what this is. But it's either something that's defective with those calipers or something that's defective with me and how I'm bleeding them. But everything is now pointing to, there's air in those lines. There's air trapped in there someplace, and it's got to come out. That's the only explanation. And the way this is behaving, sure feels like there's air trapped inside the calipers. So that's what I'm going to work on next, I guess.
I didn't capture it on video because, frankly, it happened pretty late at night, but this was our culprit. It's the design of these brakes, believe it or not, and I found it through a pretty obscure internet search. So these brakes, this system, is based on a mid-80s Cadillac Seville design. These are caliper-based parking brakes, as opposed to the hub-centric parking brakes that are a little bit more prevalent now. And the bleeder is on the upper part of the caliper, and it's pointed up, but it's not apparently high enough up on the caliper. So this faked me out, because this is on the right side. You can see here it's stamped R. This is the right side of the car, so it's in the right spot. I double checked that about 50 times. But this bleeder is apparently not high enough.
So let me try to explain this as best as I can as to why this stupid brake caliper was causing me such agony. Because maybe this helps you out in the future if you run into another problem that's similar to this. So I know this isn't hyper realistic, but sorry, we blew this month's CGI budget. This is sort of a side view of a standard disc brake caliper, right? So your rotor would go here, right? This is the reservoir where your piston is going to sit. It's going to push against the pads that are going to grab the rotor, right? So not everything's to scale or proportion, but I wanted to draw this out so you can see this little dotted line represents sort of the inside of that well where the fluid's going to sit, right? You'd have some sort of intake down here. This is where your brake line is going to come in and supply your brake fluid into that reservoir. And then you've got a bleeder valve that's up here. That's where you want to let the air escape. So the fluid's going to come in and sort of fill this reservoir behind the piston. So when the piston's at rest, this fluid's going to come in here and fill that open space behind the piston, right? And when you first do this, there's going to be an air pocket up here, right? So the fluid's going to fill up to, say, there. Right. So now when you go ahead and pump the brakes and bleed them, the hope is, or the intended design is, that you're going to pump those brakes and the fluid's going to go all the way up to the tippity top and completely fill this cavity. This whole thing would be full. Here's the problem with the design of my brakes. That brake bleeder really should be up here. It should be like in the 12 o'clock position so that there's no opportunity for any air to collect inside of that reservoir, but it's not. The position that it is, where it sits when the brakes are attached to my axle, puts it at, like, I would call it a 2 o'clock position on here, or at a 10 o'clock position, depending upon which wheel we're talking about or how you're facing it. So that means that there's an opportunity, even when you bleed it, for air to be captured up above the bleeder. So even though you have pumped and pumped and pumped and there's no more air coming out, it's because there's no air touching the bleeder anymore. The air's up here. The air can't get to the bleeder to escape. There's just no possibility. So that's why what I had to do was to take this whole thing off of the car, rotate it so that this bleeder was physically pointing upward, and then vacuum out the system so that it pulled all the air out and closed that bleeder off again. Now, I'm not faulting Quick Performance for this. Quick Performance didn't make these brakes. They're not theirs. It's not their design. This is actually a GM design. These are typically referred to as, I think, Seville brakes. They're from the 85 Cadillac. And they just kind of suck, kind of don't. So there's some good things about them. There's some not so great things about them. They're pretty simple brakes to be able to put on a car. The design is fairly simple. The parking brake mechanism is relatively simple because it's just a lever mechanism that's on the caliper instead of having a whole separate parking brake mechanism that runs inside the rotor of the brake. Normally, your rear disc brakes, if they have a parking brake in them, most style of those brakes will actually have sort of like a drum brake that's inside the disc brake. That's your parking brake. Well, these just use the actual regular caliper to pull shut with a lever that's attached to the throttle cable, to the parking brake cable. That works pretty neat. It's pretty simple for my needs. It's great. I just need it for inspection. I don't otherwise use that parking brake lever pretty much at all. So that part of it works fine for me. The brakes work fine as they are. Now that they're running, it's great. They're fine. They're good. I don't have a concern about them. I just wish that there was more call-outs. I actually did reach back out to Quick Performance and say, hey, maybe extra sheet of instructions to sort of explain this to those of us dummies who might get this and may not think about that as the next step would be helpful. So please add that in because I didn't see it anywhere. Now, in fairness to Quick Performance too, I didn't reach out to them until I was like at the end of my rope. And even when I did that, it was late at night and I did it by email to their help team, and they did get right back to me. But by the time they did, I had already figured this out late at night and gotten the job done. So I did reach out. They came back to me really quickly, but not before I had finally just gotten there. So again, no harm, no foul on there, and they did reach back out to help me, and I'm sure they would have been able to get me through this if I hadn't been able to figure it out late that night. So all's good, but otherwise, that rear end is awesome. All right, so now our parking brake cables are installed. Those parking brakes are as adjusted as they're going to get right now. I don't see nothing else on this list. I think we're good. Well, that was a long time coming. Holy crap. Like 3 weeks worth of riding on the struggle bus with this thing, all to find out that it really kind of wasn't my fault, which is sort of a relief. I had kind of a decompression night with my buddy, Mystery Mike, and we were talking this through, and yeah, I could have done a better job of troubleshooting this, and I did get a little bit lost in the weeds, but honestly, looking at those brakes, and I confirmed it with Mike, he thought the same thing. Neither one of us would have ever thought that that bleeder was the culprit and these things weren't bleeding properly. So, process of elimination, we finally got there. I was thinking it was bad parts, and bad parts don't happen all the time, but they can, especially when you're talking about lesser expensive parts like brake proportioning valves. So, that's the way it rolls sometimes, but we got it solved. And lesson learned on my end, sometimes it is those parts. But another lesson learned, the instructions ain't always going to help you. And the internet isn't always going to help you. When I say that the article that helped me was 10 years old, I mean it. And the brake model that guy was referring to wasn't the same model because his bleeders were on the bottom side of the calipers. Now, if my bleeders were on the bottom side of the calipers, trust me guys, I would have known to look for that. That's wrong. That's not an okay position for the bleeders to be in. That would have even raised my antenna. That's not where they were. They were up at the top. So, it took me a while to find it, and that took a very specific search, because trust me when I tell you, I've been on the internet just about every night trying to find solutions for this thing. And most of the solutions that I was finding were pointing me towards things like, get your master cylinder, get your proportioning valve. Those made sense. So I was following what the troubleshoots were sort of leading me to based on the symptoms that I had. It just wasn't to be. But resolved now, my brake pedal's back just in time for me to go on vacation, so I don't have to agonize and think about this thing while I'm trying to enjoy my trip. And now she's back running and stopping again, which is important. Now I did get a chance to drive this thing around yesterday. I'm out cruising it around in it now. But this thing does rip now. Right now I'm just trying to get her a little bit warmed up, get her up to temperature so that I can have some fun. But the difference in those 3.5 gears and the posi versus the open rear end and the 2.5/6s, is already amazing. This thing wants to get going out of a dig like nothing before. It is amazing how much it wants to shoot out of the hole. It's got a lot of bottom end power now that it wants to use all at once, and it's pretty awesome. Interestingly, now with both wheels gripping the ground, I can feel it sort of tugging as I pulled around that corner. Both of those wheels wanted to grip. And it's a lot harder to get the wheels to spin. I was pulling burnouts in this thing, one wheel peels, but burnouts constantly in this thing before without having to touch the brake. You could just get on the gas enough and you'd burn those tires no problem. I have not been able to spin the tires in this thing yet. So partially that's because I haven't really tried hard. Because I haven't really had this thing, you know, out in the proper frolicking mode. But partially it's because both of those wheels gripping, this thing doesn't want to just break loose. It's applying to that power in the ground and it's getting me going fast. And the other part of it is the gear ratio. So that taller gear ratio that I had before with the 256s, those taller gears wanted those wheels to spin faster. So that taller gear ratio, it made it harder for the car to get going because it didn't have that low tugging gearing. But it made it easier for the wheels to spin quicker. So easier for it to break loose. This, not doing it. That 3.5 gearing, it wants to turn those wheels at a slower pace. So it just wants to grip the road. It wants to get me going. It's pretty awesome. I can't possibly end this video, these two videos, without giving you guys some sweet, smoky two-wheel burnouts, can I? I think not. What kind of a YouTuber would I be? Well, guys, we're finally finished. And I got to tell you, this is way, way up there on the biggest changes. I think it's only second to actually replacing the engine in this car itself in terms of how much of a difference this makes in the drivability of the car. It is night and day. It has completely woken this car up in terms of how it drives around on the street. It uses this engine in a much, much better way now. You can get on the throttle a lot harder. This thing just picks up, digs, and goes. It is so much more responsive, so much more fun to drive around the back roads. It is a blast. It is weird to drive it now at higher speeds. It definitely feels like it needs another gear. I definitely kind of wish I had a fourth gear in this thing to kick into. But that's a whole other story, maybe for another day, but another day much later when, you know, wallets are bigger, because right now the wallet's flat. So maybe that's a later thing, but it does run great. It runs awesome and it pulls hard. It is running higher on the highway now, you know, about $3,000 at 65, but for the amount that I drive on the highway, I'll take it, man. This thing is an absolute pleasure to drive. So thanks for watching and tuning in. Please join us next time. And until then, keep on throwing wrenches.